Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. It's the Weekend Answer Show. Garrett Fay, Jim Righeimer talking about the biggest stories of the week. Pleased this segment to be joined by Lanhee Chen. He's a very successful guy, husband, father, several degrees from that little place called Harvard back east. But for some reason, he has decided, despite all his personal success, he wants to serve us and the people of the great state of California by being the controller. So Lanhee Chen, welcome to the Weekend Answer. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, give us a little bit of your background, and once we do that, we want to hear about what in God's name is compelling you to leave your great life and serve us in the state of California and specifically in Sacramento.
Well, I grew up in Southern California. You know, my parents came to the United States from Taiwan. They immigrated to the U.S., did not know anybody here, and built an incredible life in California. And I enjoyed my upbringing, really loved growing up in Southern California. I grew up in a town called Rowland Heights, which some of your listeners might be familiar with. It's about 25 miles east of L.A. And it was a wonderful place and time to be growing up here in California. Fast forward about 20 years, and my wife and I had just finished some time on the East Coast. I've been serving in presidential administrations. I had done a lot of policy work on big issues like healthcare and Social Security. We moved back to California. I actually had an opportunity to teach and work at Stanford University at a place called the Hoover Institution, which is a big public policy think tank up in Northern California. And the California that we came back to, I'll tell you, was nothing like the California I'd left. The California I'd left was a place of opportunity. It was a place where people felt like they could grow their lives and grow their businesses. And the California I came back to just wasn't like that. You know, it was a place that felt like people were coming to California to leave. So many families couldn't make it work. The economics were a lot harder here. It felt like the schools weren't as good. It felt like our communities weren't as safe. The homeless problem was worse. And so for all these reasons, I decided, it's time for me to step up and take my experience and take my background. I'm not a career politician. I'm not someone who's been elected and hopping from office to office. I thought, it's time for me to do something different. It's time for me to give back. And the best way I know how is, we'll talk about it in a little bit, to contribute by making our state's finances better, to make our state finances more accountable, and to finally get some return on what we're spending. We're spending all this money. It feels like we're not getting anything back in return. And so I said, it's time for a change. And so I said, I'll step up and run for office.
Lanhee, Jim here. Exactly what you're talking about, what's happened in California in the last, 5-6 years probably is the biggest time when you came back here. Let's get right into it. As controller, that's usually considered a job off to the side. It's a stepping stone to somewhere else. Usually, like in the Democratic Party, they'll move somebody through it. What can you do in that department that's going to make a difference to the people in California?
Yeah, I want all your listeners to understand this is an incredible opportunity for us to bring some accountability back to California. Why is that? The controller is the independently elected chief financial officer of the state of California. What does that mean? It's the person who's supposed to give us accountability for every single dollar the state spends. And that's important because you know how much money the state is spending? $300 billion in 2018 the state spent. And there's no accountability for where that money went. The state of California cannot tell us line by line where all that money went. If you think about your family budget, if you ran your family budget that way, you'd be bankrupt. If you ran a business that way, you'd be in jail. In the state of California, that's business as usual. So the controller is an independently elected person. What does that mean? The controller doesn't report to Governor Gavin Newsom. He or she doesn't report to any of the other people who are elected statewide. So this office is crucially important if we're ever going to get control of how this state is spending its money again. And that's why I'm so passionate about this. I know a lot of people think, I bet your listeners thought when they got up this morning, boy, I'm excited to hear about the California State Controller's Office. But listen, the reason why it's important is because this is the office that can finally give us a handle on all of the shenanigans in Sacramento. And we need an independent voice. We need a watchdog, not a lapdog. And that's why this office is so crucial.
Now we're speaking with Lanhee Chen. He's running for California Controller. His website is chenforcalifornia.com, chenforcalifornia.com. Lanhee, I know you did some time back in D.C. I spent a couple years working in the U.S. Senate. I know that one of the things you worked on is Social Security reform and other health care issues. We're coming out of the week when President Joe Biden gave his first State of the Union, talked about a lot of more spending he wants to do. If you would, can you just give us a sense of how your background working in national politics, understanding those national issues, plays into what the California controller can do, given that California receives so much federal money, and a lot of what we need to account for is how California has spent federal dollars, especially in the COVID era?
Well, listen, you're absolutely right. My background working in federal policy and big issues like Social Security and health care helps me understand all of this federal money that's being spent, all that money that's coming into California. How do we get accountability for it? How do we get some transparency for it? Because I've seen where that money's coming from. I've seen the impact, by the way, of bad federal policy. And I'll say this, we're experiencing inflation here in California, like in many other parts of the country. The inflation is so bad, in part because for the last couple of months, and certainly since President Biden's been in office, we've seen him and we've seen Congress make decisions to increase significantly by trillions of dollars the amount of spending. And when you increase spending that significantly, what you do is you create the right conditions for there to be inflation. And that's why we're seeing it here in California. The controller, actually, the great thing about this office is one of the jobs of the controller is actually to give taxpayers accountability for where all that federal money coming into California is being spent. You actually have the ability to audit any agency of state government or any local agency like a school district, let's say, that's using federal money. So this is an important platform also because you have the audit power. And as you guys know, there is so many programs in California where the money is not being spent well, or we know, like with this EDD, unemployment insurance fraud, where $20 billion went out the door. We need more accountability for that money.
Yeah, and $20 billion, and they're basically saying that we want the employers to pay for it. We're just going to go ahead and raise the rates and kind of figure out what that $20 billion would. And you know, I was going to say not put people in jail. The people taking the money were all in jail. But back to what you're talking about, federal dollars and how they get spent. You talk about $300 billion. It just glazes over people. They don't understand that it was, less than $200 billion not that long ago, that the dollars are out of sight. I'll give you a simple example here. I was the mayor of Costa Mesa, so obviously I still follow their budget. And there's a park in Costa Mesa called Talbert Park, and it has some homeless in the park, about 120 homeless. The federal government is giving $3.6 million. So I look at that and I go, that's $30,000 per person to get them out of the park. They came back and they said, no, we can't do it for that. It costs $60,000 a person. $60,000. I mean, hell, you can go to Harvard almost for $60,000.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to spend that kind of dollars. But nobody seems to wrap their arms around it. It's like throw $3.6 million at something just to kind of chew up money. Talk about how the controller can really drill into that and maybe put it in a way that the public can go, this is nuts, and they can understand the numbers.
Yeah, and this is what I really enjoy. One of the things I enjoy about this campaign is really getting to explain to people just how much money is sloshing around in the system. I mean, you talk about $20 billion in that unemployment insurance fraud. I want to put that into perspective. That's 300,000 new teachers in California, 275,000 new firefighters, 250,000 cops. It's an amazing amount of money. And you think about the homeless problem specifically. It's a great point you raised. The city of L.A. just came out recently with a report that said they spent $830,000 per homeless person to house a homeless
person for one.
I want you to think about that. $830,000. We literally could have taken someone, moved them to a different state, bought them a home, given them a savings account, put money in their savings account. They'd be set for the rest of their lives with that amount of money. People should not just be angry about this. My solution is not just get angry. It's get even. It's get out there and figure out how do we fix this system so we're not wasting this money. And by the way, we need to solve the problem. That's the bigger issue, is that you got people out there who are homeless who need help, and we're not helping them, but we're spending $830,000 in the broken city of L.A., and now these L.A. politicians and the Sacramento politicians, want us to give them a chance to run the state? Give me a break.
Right. Well, that was Lanhee Chen. Lanhee, thanks for being with us. Again, if you want to help him out, go to chenforcalifornia.com, chenforcalifornia.com.
Coming up, the January 6th committee claims to have the evidence of criminal conduct against Trump, some reasons to oppose Biden's pick for the Supreme Court, and a list of news on transgender issues. Don't change that dial.